Hola amigos! Coming up in this episode...
Things begin very badly when I lose both my credit cards, so I keep myself busy for a few days making electrical modifications to the bike. Then I visit some mummies that are 2,000 years older than the ones in Egypt. Then set off south from Arica to Pica. But then I get lost due to my inability to read my GPS. Along the way I see some strange sculptures, passing a reminder of how far I still have to go. I clear an internal Chilean quarantine, stopping at the astounding geoglyphs, descending a couple of spectacular cuestas, burying a geocache, pass through an amazing Atacama pampa, see more intriguing geoglyphs, clocking up 2,000 kilometres before finally arriving at my destination at dusk after 350 kilometres.
So I'm in Arica in the far north of Chile, but I had to change hostels because Ross had overbooked. The solution was quite simple. Just a few blocks away was another hostel, the end of the trail, built and run by our friend Franklin from the United States. His place was spotless, as you can see. He loved history, being a Vietnam vet. He told me that his stepfather, who was English, used to work for the late Natalie Wood, the Hollywood actress. Remember in episode 13 I had to put my feet down into some wastewater in a street and they went over the top of my boots. I only had like ankle-length boots at that point, and I thought nothing of it at the time. Well, this is the result. You know, I should have put some foot powder or something on my feet, because the sole of my feet started cracking. Then I got attacked by mosquitoes, and that's what those red scratch marks are. So walking was painful, but bit by bit I started getting better. Back in sunny days, I decided to weigh all my bags just to make sure they came to less than 90 kilograms, which I figured was the average weight of a man, a pillion passenger. The bike should be able to handle it. It did come in just under 90 kilograms. Then I noticed I had a little waterproof satchel that had my debit and credit card in it, and I couldn't find it. So I assumed I'd been robbed. Well, talk about panic and disappointment. I had to get on the phone, the emergency number to Australia, cancel the cards with the bank. My dad was on holiday celebrating his 70th birthday, so I couldn't really get him to do much for me, but I came up with this plan. I would transfer $1,000 to my dad, he'd send it Western Union to here, and after talking to the bank they would send the replacement cards to my dad, who would then send it on to Santiago de Chile, where I would be in a week or two. And then guess what happened? I found the cards, I'd hidden them so well I didn't see them. But the banks were so secure they wouldn't let me uncancel the cards. So I still had to be sort of really economical with my cash. Then more problems. You know, I got that blue helmet for free when I bought the motorbike and the visor broke, but nobody in Arica had the same type of visor. So I came up with this solution. And it was far from perfect because I wear spectacles as well. I have to wear them when I'm riding. I need them to see things far away. But anyway, that was the temporary solution. To keep myself busy, I decided to do a little bit more electrical work on the bike. On that rear black top box, I fed in a 12-volt cable from the battery and had those like cigarette lighter sockets. And from that I powered up a 10-bank AA battery charger, because I figured, you know, if I'm down camping in Patagonia and I need power, it's always good to have extra batteries. And on the front, in the white plastic box, I put in a 12-volt to USB converter, and those cables will power my various GPS units. That little blue transparent pod in the top middle there that says 32.8, that's actually degrees Celsius. That's a digital temperature recorder. I bought it on a whim, you know, I'd like to know exactly what sort of temperatures I'm experiencing on the road, you know, just for fun. As you can see, I like gadgets. I also mounted a second broomstick on the rear, and I mounted this little 12-volt electric motor that spins very slowly, 2 RPM, with the idea of putting a camera on there. But as you can see, it doesn't look very sturdy, and I think I have more work to do there. It did work, but I don't know, I wouldn't trust it. not going over bumps and wind and stuff like that. By the way, this is what the Chilean police ride in their highway patrol. Big BMWs. They're called Carabineros de Chile, which loosely translates as Riflemen of Chile. So after 4 days, the money my dad sent arrived, and I went to pick it up at Western Union, and now finally I felt I was ready to hit the long road south.
There was one more thing I wanted to see before leaving Arica, and it was situated at number 10 Colon Street, near the foot of the Morro headland. Its fairly modern looking facade belied an ancient culture behind that door and under some glass. They gave me a guidebook in English which was very helpful. It said this site was only discovered in 2004 when some workmen were digging foundations for a new building. After lifting the floorboards of an existing building and lifting up rubbish including newspapers dated to 1917, they found human skeletons looking up at them. At least 48 have been documented and many more may lay deeper, as this plot of land was used as an ancient cemetery for thousands of years. What makes these bodies unique? Some had wigs made of human hair attached to the cranium with mud. You can see there that skull appears to have dyed red hair. Close inspection of one of the skulls shows it had a bone growth coming out of its ear cavity, a condition known as exostosis, which is often associated with people who dive in cold seawater. The skeletons had good teeth, indicating a diet free of carbohydrates, and although these looked just like bones, many of them had flesh and hair still intact, and masks made of mud. In some cases, the flesh and soft organs had been removed, and the skin stuffed with grass. You can see there where they've been laid to rest on a mat of woven totora reed, and totora still grows in the Ruta River estuary here in Arica. Babies and infants seem to receive the most elaborate burials. The oldest Chinchorro mummies date to more than 5000 BCE, which is 2,000 years older than the Egyptian mummies. The balcony provided a sweeping vista of the area from the Uta Valley, the Pacific Ocean, up to the Moro Peninsula, and it's obvious why they picked this spot to bury their dead, because it had a beautiful view, high and above any watercourse that could cause flood damage or scavenging animals, and it worked because they've remained more or less undisturbed for over 7,000 years. I didn't have 7,000 years. That same morning I set off south, my aim being to reach the town of Pica, almost 350 kilometres to the south. After making an early wrong turn, I had to fill up. Ross had gifted me a 10-litre auxiliary jerry can, which almost doubled my range. There is a gas station between Arica and Pica, but they sometimes ran out of fuel, Ross told me. The extreme north of Chile and the extreme south down in Patagonia were the only two places where, at least on paper, I needed to carry extra fuel. But it's always a good idea to carry a bit extra because you never know with strikes, they run out of gas. And also on a motorbike, if you leave it unattended, it's very easy for people to thieve gasoline just by pulling the little tube out and filling a Coca-Cola can or whatever, and that can and does happen sometimes, and I don't have a fuel gauge, so it's always a good idea to at least carry 1 or 2 litres of extra fuel. Anyhow, I'm going to speed up the video here so you can see how I botched it leaving town. I lost 40 minutes trying to find my way out of Arica. Part of the problem is I wear spectacles, and the spectacles correct myopia, so I have to stop and take my glasses off before I can read the GPS. German college there on the left. Pretty soon I realised I was on the wrong road heading out of town. Time to turn around then. I might have had 3 GPSs and there might have been only 3 roads that really leave Arica in each direction, but I still got lost. Only 2 of my GPSs have maps on it, and only one of them has a big map, and it's still not as big as a proper map for, people who are riding. So I still managed to stuff it up. I think also my bearings are partly mixed up for 2 reasons. 1, they drive on the other side of the road, and I'm still not used to that. And 2, I've got to learn to read the GPS map differently because north is at the top, but I'm heading south. So what looks like a left-hand turn is actually a right-hand turn because I'm going the opposite way. Anyhow, eventually I found the right road, which was the PanAmericana. Soon the traffic jam was left behind and there was just open road and featureless terrain. Featureless until I got to this. What strange sculptures. They seemed almost surreal, especially given their isolation and this howling wind that was just whistling past your ears. That tick 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 you can hear is my engine cooling down. I wonder what they represent. They're called presencias tutelares, which means the guardian presence. But what are they guarding? I don't know, but it's time to hit the road again. The geology around here is just amazing. Look at that pink and white layering on the left there. Chile and many other countries in Latin America, they mark their milestones, or rather kilometre markers, based on 0 being in the capital. So in this case, it's 2,000 kilometres to Santiago, the capital. And from there it's over 3,000 to Ushuaia and Patagonia, so I've got 5,000 kilometres ahead of me. Better keep going. There's some spectacular valleys here, and I have to descend them down to the river level, cross them, and then rise up again. Look at that guardrail. Someone came to grief here, and someone else came to grief there. Look at that. There is some greenery down there. Finally at the valley floor. Here we're crossing from the Arica region into the Tarapacá region, and this is the Camarones River. Coming up here is an internal customs checkpoint. As Chile is long, thin and running north-south, it's divided into 16 regions, like states, and the river valleys are often the natural boundaries between these regions. They form a natural barrier for agricultural pests and diseases and whatnot. These little agricultural communities that live off irrigation, so they asked me about fruit and vegetables, and when I said I didn't have any, they said, okay, go on your way. So I didn't stay very long, but I did need a drink, because that dry wind coming off the Atacama, it saps every bit of moisture out of your skin. Actually, now we're travelling parallel to the river valley. Looks like they're getting gravel there on the left. Then, all of a sudden, rounding a sweeping left-hand curve, something amazing appeared. These geoglyphs are huge, tens of metres tall and around 1,000 years of age. They were made by arranging loose surface stones into these patterns. Seen from above, you soon realise that they face east to catch the rising sun. And they are situated at the junction of 2 major rivers. So in times past, you could imagine traders with caravans of alpacas would wander up these valleys, taking produce from the sea up to the people into the highlands, and then bringing back down stuff. Trueco, they call it in Spanish, like trade. It's amazing that these simple arrangement of rocks have withstood centuries of wind, earthquakes, etc. And if you look closer, you see those little white boxes there? They're animitas, or roadside memorial shrines. So there has been an accident on that curve and people died there. Now we have to climb out of the valley and cross another barren high plain. These plains are at over 1,000 metres altitude. I don't envy these guys battling the wind. At least the sun is behind the clouds today. That sign says I've still got almost 200 kilometres to go to Pica. I better get a move on, otherwise I'll have to stay at an earlier town, one called Ruta, which wasn't my plan. I imagine this is how the Nullarbor plain would look. Flat, straight, but here we're at a lot higher altitude. Now we're entering a cuesta here, which is like a winding inclination. Look at that geological strata on the left. It looks like you could almost eat it. It looks like layers of a chocolate cake with cream. So here we are crossing the Tanacamiña River. Now we're winding our way back up the other side of the cuesta. The bike seems to be handling it okay. Have to drop back a cog or two though. It's not that easy for it. Here's another cuesta, the Tiviliche. So now we're back up crossing the high windy plain. I pulled up at this spot to refuel my bike from the plastic jerry can, and it was no easy feat in the high winds. It was near a crossroads and there was this little animitas memorial. It's a wonder its little garland of flowers didn't get blown away in these high winds. And I also decided to bury another geocache, another 50-cent coin, near here. There's the GPS if you want to go and dig it up. Now we were crossing a long straight stretch of the Pampa de Tamarugal. This plain holds a special interest to geologists and astrophysicists alike. For many years, locals found a peculiar type of glass, natural glass, often green in colour. Originally they thought it was of volcanic origin, or perhaps formed by lightning strikes or grass fires. but it turns out when you analyse it under a microscope, it has its origins quite literally out of this world. They now think a comet or an asteroid around about 12,000 years ago entered the Earth's atmosphere at such a shallow angle that the friction with the atmosphere heated it up and caused it to explode, causing a momentary flash of heat that was so intense that it melted the top few inches of the desert sands in this area, converting it into like a sheet of natural glass. And 12,000 years ago there were people living in this area, so they would have been annihilated. Next, we came to some more geoglyphs, even stranger than the previous ones. These are called the X-Aura geoglyphs. Again, the wind was fierce. But check out that hill there. See the circular symbol on the left? Obviously something to do with a solar cult. Interestingly, it does not lie directly on the summit of that hill, but on a west-facing slope. Obviously used for solar, perhaps lunar and astronomical observations. There are a few low peaks that they could have used, but they also had those rays coming out of the circle that they could have used, or they could have had sticks or something that's not there anymore to check their alignments. Because the horizon here is very flat, but not completely flat. I know because I checked by putting its GPS coordinates into this online virtual horizon generator. Obviously very important to people because in this area there's only a couple of weeks when there's rain. Often there's no rain, it's just that the rivers flood from rain high up in the mountains. The Atacama is one of the driest deserts in the world. So the ancient people that were traversing this terrain with their caravans of llamas, it was very critical to know the date and to plan things around that, when there would be water for them and their animals. It quite literally was a matter of life and death, so that's why these things were so important to them. I'm going to increase the contrast now so you can see it a little bit better. There it is there. I've got to keep moving. A milestone of sorts next up, rather I should say a kilometre sign. My bike Atwakey has now clocked up 2,000 kilometres, 10% of its warranty. I wonder what the final figure will be. I arrived in the town of Pica just after sunset, and after discounting one hotel because it was a little bit out of my budget, I saw a sign that said cabañas, which means cabins, and that's going to be my lodgings for tonight. And remember when I said the hot dry wind really saps the moisture out of you? Look at the salt stains on the back of my black t-shirt when I took it off.
Now, coming up in the next episode, but make sure you subscribe first, otherwise you might miss it.
This place is called Dinosaur Valley. She said he was known as the Coca-Cola Kid, and then she herself burst into tears, but not about him. And then to round out the trilogy of bad luck, this.